My name is Esegie. I'm a Nigerian-based tech entrepreneur of Core ID, a VerifyMe company. At Core ID, my co-founder and I have built a digital identity platform that makes it easy for people to get access to financial inclusion products. Our platform is already being used by over 200 fintechs, generating over 20 million financial inclusion decisions annually. We are relied upon by banks, lenders, insurance companies for ID verification and consumer analytics across Nigeria, Ghana, and we're going into other African countries. We're so excited to see how it's helping to transform lives. I'm here today to talk to you about building for change and how I believe activism and a focus on effective social change can be a foundation for any successful entrepreneur. Especially in developing markets, which is a little bit different from being an entrepreneur in a developed market. This talk is about my accidental activism. I hope to give you insight into the challenges of building a business or developing a business in our ecosystem so that we can embrace the characteristics beyond the conventional or beyond the traditional ones expected from founders. Because these characteristics are the root needed for business success and ultimately for social change, which is why most of us are here in the first place. One of the things is many of us are increasingly focused on not just on being successful, but on using business as a force for good and for sustainable development. I believe very strongly that when you are building for change in a so-called emerging market, you are more of an activist than you actually know. And for me, I call it unintentional activism, because many of us don't think of social activism as part of the makeup of an entrepreneur. But in building technology solutions that address systemic challenges, such as digital identity access, like we do at Core ID, we found that we had to also be proactive and intentional in building the ecosystem to support and grow our work. I believe that this is the only way to achieve long-term sustainable growth for our business. As we started to build, I recall one time a regulator said to me that, of all the founders he sees in Nigeria, I'm one of the ones who's expected to jump through their window when I see a regulation that doesn't work for my industry. And one of the things that I discovered is that when you look at change or a startup, the root of it is really activism. And activism really is the tree, is the root of it. The startup that you have is the tree. And the social change is actually the fruit that comes out of that hard work and activism that you have done. I would say that, as we started to evolve, and I'll give you a little bit of, my background. I started out, 20 years ago. I went to Howard University, a historically black college university that really focused on civil rights and activism and social change in America. And I had the opportunity to be part of that. And I went to Howard University at a time when Nigeria was really under, military rule as well. So I really started out being trained, in being a little bit activist and trying to represent my country. We were always carrying flags and protesting the military government. After, I graduated, basically I thought I had left that world behind. And therefore, there was this, the strong need to continue to represent and illustrate your culture, which I did in Howard University. I think, as I went into my professional career, I had moved on from that. Through my leadership as a student at Howard University, and the broader experience interacting with historical civil rights figures, actually, I developed a strong sense of my own place as an everyday activist and an agent of change. I immersed myself in books about, Martin Luther King, and I think I got a little bit schooled on, what it was to be an activist. But I never really thought that this was something that I was going to, these were characteristics that were going to apply to what I was doing in my future. After I, left, I worked as an engineer, moved in my career. And as it's the case with many of us, you finish school and you think you're done with that form of activism. I became an engineer. I worked at a company, various companies actually, and which mostly focused on your skill set. Are you a good engineer? Do you have management skills? Do you have professional integrity? But as I came to Nigeria, within the first year, moving back to Nigeria to build Core ID, my co-founder and I began to work within our ecosystem and realized that we weren't just building a business. We had to advocate with regulators within our ecosystem to establish digital sovereignty, ensure national data is seen as a critical asset, and even push to establish an association to represent all our interests as Nigerians. I found that along with writing software design documents and managing teams, I was conducting training on enterprise architecture in government, contributing to draft regulations, demanding change in regulation where it would impede or hurt my industry. I told you the story of regulators. There's a story once of a regulator had published a story once, and it came out in the news. Coincidentally, when the story came out, I showed up at their office, and he literally just, was so taken aback and turned to his colleagues and said, "I told you he was the first one that was going to show up," right? And so they were always expecting me to come in and push. Another thing I realized that I needed to join hands with my competitors to ensure that we had a fighting chance of running and scaling our business, recognizing the need to create awareness and discourse in our space. We partnered with Dalberg, for example, which is some of the things you have to do to publish the first report on digital identity in Nigeria. And of course, we're going to work on future other publications to socialize our business, really with government, with regulators, and also with our customers. I began to realize that I was calling on my old strengths to bring me courage, that our success wasn't just about solutions architecture and operations and scaling, but it really also was about representing our vision every day, not just in the private sector. In an emerging market, what you are building is bigger than the sum of your parts, but some of its parts. This really freed me. I began to accept myself as not just a co-founder, entrepreneur, seeking a return on investment, but really as an activist for my ecosystem. And if activism is defined as a practice of taking action to bring change, whether social, political, or environmental, then that's what we are, and we need to accept it. If you look around, at the evolving discussions around business, education, and practice, there is an increasing awareness that there is awareness of the need to intentionally bring about this awareness in entrepreneurs and managers, that business can and should be used for good and be seen as a key development priority. As we continue on our journey, there are some key lessons I really would like to share from my experience with my fellow founders and co-founders that are here. My lesson one is adapt and learn. You can't be selective about what you choose to overcome every day, especially in an emerging market. Be open to a different type of adaptability. Continue to operate in the ecosystem. I realized that we had challenges. While we were building products, we had a relatively unclear stand on digital sovereignty and needed to change the mindset on how we look at data. We did not really have regulation for data at the time, and we do now. My lesson two is that you can't build your business without building your segment or your ecosystem. You're not just a business owner. You're really an owner and a stakeholder in your whole ecosystem. And your engagement and participation is not an option. The lesson three, I would say, is advocacy and influence is very important. You must advocate your cause by using your voice, influencing public opinion, and advocating for policy changes, and engage with decision makers, policy makers, stakeholders, and really using evidence-based arguments and persuasive techniques to drive change at various levels. But then guess what? You can't do it alone. Because the ecosystem actually does impact everybody. As we continue to advocate, we realized that we had more success every time we were able to come together with our competitors. And what I realized at that point, and really was the key lesson for me, which is very different from, I would say, developed markets, is that in an emerging market, your competitor has to be your friend and has to be your partner, because you are going to be building that ecosystem together. In engaging our government to engage the government to establish criteria for operations and a way forward to work together. The lesson I took from this, right, also is that you really have to look at your market as big enough for everybody, and really embrace the competition to move forward. I have competitors that I talk to every day, because we're talking about our ecosystem, and we're really very friendly. We go out and have drinks, we talk to each other, and this is something that, I think is very necessary when you're building your ecosystem as well. We believe that everyone has the right to a digital identity. It has to be secure, and all countries need to set their own boundaries, and we are committed to making that a reality for the countries that we're in Africa. We have found ourselves working with governments, businesses, NGOs to raise awareness about the importance of digital identity. We're also developing educational resources to help people understand how to use their digital identities. We believe that the digital identity and fair credit scoring is a powerful tool for change, and it can help people escape poverty, improve their health, and get access to better education. It can also help promote good governance and democracy. We're excited to be part of this movement, and we're committed to use our technology to make the world a better place. And to entrepreneurs, what I would say to you, and I think I touched on this earlier, you have the power to change the world. You have the skills and the resources to build solutions that can address the challenges facing the emerging markets. I encourage you to use your skills, use your resources to be an accidental activist. Together, we can make a difference. What I learned is that in building in emerging markets, activism is the root. Your startup is the tree, and societal change is the fruit. Thank you.